Hello and welcome to Dissecting Dexter, a podcast devoted to the TV series Dexter. I'm your host, Gareth Watkins, speaking to you from the heart of Yorkshire, England. It is the 8th of August 2024 as I record, and I'm pretty fresh still from a very hot week in Turkey with my family. And it was a good week, but I found myself on my phone a lot, checking out all the news coming from San Diego Comic-Con, where there was a panel for Dexter Original Sin, although as you will all probably know by now, there was also a very exciting and intriguing announcement about yet another Dexter project. Yes, the franchise expands. A barrage of Dexter news drops just as I'm about to go on holiday for a week, delaying me being able to talk about it with you, but on the plus side, I have had a week to think about it and get a feel for the fan base reaction, which is, I have to say, has probably been more on the positive side overall. But picture me in my Speedos. No, don't. Picture me just sitting in a shady spot by the pool. You can't unsee that now, can you, in your mind's eye? Picture me by the pool, shady spot, temperature in the high 30s, beer in one hand, phone in the other, thinking about Dexter and wanting to talk with you about it. No, we had a really good week, good family time. We were all very, very much ready for a break. We stayed in the resort of Dalian, which was really beautiful. The town is on a river adjacent to a delta going out into the Mediterranean Sea. Mountains all around. It's a spectacular place. We had plenty of rest, but still made time for exploring the area. We did lots of swimming and we ate lots of lovely Turkish food. We're going away again in a couple of weeks for a few days in the Lake District, which will be a lot cooler in comparison, but a summer wouldn't be complete for me if we didn't get out into the Cumbrian Fells. Long-term listeners and certainly listeners of my old podcast, Gareth's Waste of Time, will know we've been going there for years and we just love it. I hope all of you are having a good summer and are feeling revved up by all the Dexter news we've had. I certainly am. But just before we get into that, a couple of bits of housekeeping. A quick heads up about what I hope will be a forthcoming podcast. I didn't know whether to announce this or not, just in case it doesn't come off, because nothing's set in stone at this point. But, you know, I'm quite excited about it. I'm in talks to interview a cast member from the early days of Dexter. They seem up for it, but we need to arrange a date and a time. I'll post who and when nearer the day, but I'll be happy to ask any listener questions, so I'll be sure to give you guys an opportunity to send anything in ahead of time in case you want to ask this person anything. dissectingdexter@gmail.com is the email address where you can send any thoughts, comments, questions, criticisms, recipes. Voicemails are always welcome, as I love to get different voices on the podcast. The Season 3 rewatch is coming back soon. Episode 10 is next, with the Dexter-Miguel bromance at tipping point. Of course, you know I do this podcast out of love for the show and the pleasure of interacting with you guys. However, as I've said before, there are now some costs with hosting the podcast files somewhere sensible and safe. You may remember a previous file host that I used had a huge server failure and I lost all the old MP3 files. And it was only the help of you guys, particularly Travis, I think, who helped me get them back. Although I'm still missing one, actually, and it was an episode that Travis hosted for me when I was on holiday. Season 7, Episode 5, Swim Deep is the one. If anyone listening still has the old episodes, and I appreciate after all this time this is a long shot, please could you drop me a line and maybe we can fill that gap. I know Travis will be very pleased, as would I. But like I said, this kind of vulnerability forced me to pay for somewhere decent to host, and this led me very reluctantly to starting a Patreon page. For as little as £1 a month, you can support the podcast and help cover the hosting costs. We've got several regular supporters who are very, very, very much appreciated, and I thank you all. You know who you are. We've got a couple of Patreon exclusive podcasts on there, and I'll do more as we go along. So there's a little added incentive there. Patreon.com/Dissecting Dexter is the place to go if you'd like to help out. Thank you. Right, let's start dissecting what we've learned about Original Sin, shall we? In the couple of weeks leading up to Comic-Con, we got some more casting news, and there are some big names, setting an interesting trend of casting names who enjoyed fame in the 1990s, when, of course, Original Sin is set. Sarah Michelle Gellar, of course, better known as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, has been cast as Tanya Martin, the CSI chief at Miami Metro. She'll be young Dexter's boss in forensics. She said in interview that she's very excited to be playing a woman in such a senior position in the early 90s, a time when women were still very much struggling to compete in those more senior roles. We also learned that Patrick Dempsey is playing Aaron Spencer, captain of Miami Metro Homicide, who has a lot of history with Harry Morgan, who we know already is played by Christian Slater, another 90s movie star. Dempsey's one of those handsome, charismatic actors who is very comfortable in the romantic roles, but I think he can also play a good asshole. I wonder if Spencer will be antagonistic like Tom Matthews was, or if he'll be a decent stand-up guy. Remains to be seen. We've also got Joe Pantoliano in the cast, playing someone called Mad Dog. Not a name I'm a huge fan of. It sounds a bit cliche. But he doesn't sound like someone from the police department. Maybe he'll be one of the bad guys for the show. Either way, he's a great character actor, and I'm really excited to see what he does. We also know who'll be playing Laura Moser and Doris Morgan, Dexter's two mothers. Brittany Allen will be Laura. I don't know her, but looking on IMDb, she does have a similar look to the actress in the original series. I see she was in an earlier season of The Boys playing Popclaw. I love that show. Playing Doris Morgan is Jasper Lewis, another actor I'm not familiar with. Looking at her resume, this could be her most prominent role to date. She's got the same dark hair as Jennifer Carpenter, looking at photos of her. Lots of other actors have been announced for some of the more minor roles. No big recognisable names. I'll not list them all now, but I'm sure we'll talk about many of them when we see them in the show later this year, so we'll give them their due. Let's look at what happened at Comic-Con, where Original Sin dominated the content of the Dexter panel. Highlights included an appearance by Michael C. Hall himself. We knew he was listed as an executive producer for the show. Indeed, Travis and I talked about that on the last podcast. But what really got me excited was the fact that he's going to be doing Dexter's inner voice for Original Sin. They showed a teaser, what looks to be possibly the new opening titles. These were really fun. The visuals were similar in many ways to those of the original. Dexter waking up with a mosquito on his arm, shaving, making breakfast. But while the original titles just showed Dexter, these included glimpses of Harry and Deb too. And while originally Dexter was just getting up and probably just going to work, this time it's Dexter's graduation day and he's wearing his graduation robes and mortarboard. We see him following Harry and Deb away from the house, but just the three of them though, so I just wonder if Doris had already died at this point or was maybe too ill to attend the graduation. The footage is billed as a teaser, so it may not be the final opening titles. Maybe it's the opening titles of the episode in which Dexter graduates. So maybe they mix it up a bit from episode to episode. Although this footage did include on-screen credits in the familiar red font, finishing with Michael's name. And that was how I discovered he was directly involved with the show, which was a big surprise for me. Glad I wasn't spoiled about that. I think I said out loud at the time, "Oh shit!" My wife got a whole lot more interested in the show when she found that out too, although she'd rather look at Michael than hear his voice, I think, given a choice of one or the other. At Comic-Con, Patrick Gibson talked a lot about how he's prepared for the role of Dexter. He's studied Hall's voice a great deal, even falling asleep listening to him, apparently. But he said he's not trying to do a direct impersonation. Sounds like he's making his own mark on the role, while trying to maintain Dexter's unique charm and charisma. This sounds good to me. I feel bad saying this. I still think I need some time to get used to someone else playing Dexter, and looking at images of Gibson in character, I'm not getting huge Dexter vibes. I may be in the minority here. I know some are happy with how he looks. It's just going to take a little getting used to for me. Maybe by the time the show airs, which they announced would be December this year, so a nice early Christmas present. But maybe by then I'll have seen enough from the stills and the inevitable trailers that I'll be happy too. I don't want to seem completely down on him though. I think he has a good look and maybe does have the acting chops to portray Dexter. They're just such huge shoes to fill. I'm rooting for him to be good, don't get me wrong, but the show hangs on how effective he is, doesn't it? This central role, it's crucial. Obviously, the writing needs to be good too, but there's a lot of pressure, not to mention fan expectation on his shoulders. Meanwhile, Molly Brown, who's playing Deb, said something similar to Gibson. She's a fan of the original show anyway, by the sound of things, and she's well accustomed to Jennifer Carpenter's performance, if that is the case, but she's trying to do her own thing because she says she has confidence in what's on the page, trusting the writers to know Deb's voice. At this point, I'm getting a little bit more of a Deb vibe from her than a Dexter vibe from Gibson. Also, during the panel, showrunner Clyde Phillips talked about how pleased he is with the cast, saying how happy he is to have been able to get all his first choice actors. Well, I suppose he has to say that, doesn't he? But, hopefully it's the truth. Talking about the new series, he said how great it was being back on the set of Miami Metro, which of course he's not done for some time. And he says it looks much the same as the old familiar office, but with some minor adjustments for the 1991 setting. He also sets a high bar for the show by telling us to expect what we've seen before, but better. Where the story goes, he says, will be surprising, astonishing, and satisfying. Obviously, obviously he has to sound committed and have confidence in what they're making, but words like astonishing, they set certain expectations, don't they? That's quite a superlative. Remember how he said the ending of New Blood would break the internet? I don't know about breaking the internet, but it certainly broke the fan base in two, with people falling on one side or the other. I suppose, relatively speaking, he was true to his word back then, and I really hope we're astonished by Original Sin. No one wants it to disappoint. Surely to goodness. I certainly don't. Although there may be some grumpy buggers out there who want it to fall on its arse and be rubbish so they can bash the writers again. Some people aren't happy unless they're complaining, but I do not not want to go through that again. Neither do I want people like Scott Reynolds to receive all that hate again on social media. Not good. Anyway, we move onwards. As I said, Original Sin will premiere in December, so we've got a few more months to avoid spoilers, but we will continue to preview the show on this podcast in a spoiler-free way. Phillips also pulled something very surprising out of the hat during the panel when he announced another Dexter spin-off. Previously, things had gone silent about New Blood Season 2, where we expected the show to follow Harrison's continuing story. And with the production well underway for Original Sin, I think most of us had given it no further thought. I hadn't. But Phillips shocked everyone by revealing that a new series would be going into production next January, and it would be called Dexter Resurrection, featuring none other than Dexter himself, with Michael C. Hall reprising his role. Huge news. This was met with astonishment, I think, by the crowd, and amazement and excitement. as you'd expect from the Comic-Con crowd. This is not a do-over of New Blood, like some may have wanted. They've said this. And that was never going to happen, and nor should it. As I've discussed here, my feelings for New Blood were overall positive, and the ending very poetic, albeit quite rushed, and we were denied our much-wanted face-off between Dexter and Batista that they'd teased. However, it was a stark reminder of who Dexter was/is at his darkest core. Not wanting to reopen what is an old wound for many fans, we kind of have to, because Resurrection is going to continue Dexter's story beyond that divisive New Blood finale. It's been teased by Hull that the cold has a part to play in how he survives Harrison's bullet. We saw Angela let Harrison go at the end, but as far as we know, she may have then checked Dexter's vitals and found he was still alive. The cold could slow the heart and slow the blood loss. He'd still be in serious trouble though, of course. Angela had rung the alarm bells about him. We know Batista was on his way there. Dexter had murdered a police officer. She wouldn't be letting him go. So it begs an important question. Where will this new story begin? Hull has implied that we pick up right where we left off, and maybe we will. We'll see the paramedics fighting to save Dexter's life, and the subsequent police interviews, the teased, much-wanted face-off with Batista, a trial, perhaps. Other ideas are being floated around, though. Will we jump forward a few days to Dexter already in a secure hospital? Will we go forward much further than that, skipping a trial to where he's in prison, facing a life sentence or even the death penalty for his crimes? We could see him escape and try to find Harrison. Jack Olcott wasn't at the Comic-Con panel, and I've not heard his name mentioned at all in any official news, so it remains to be seen if he'll be involved with Resurrection. But I would really love to get the Batista face-off. Some fans, I remember our old friend Mike Lanick was one who was disappointed with how New Blood ended because it let Dexter off the hook pretty easily. Okay, he was dead, but a nice quick death and not having to face the full legal consequences for his actions. Yes, he was dead, or so we thought, but it left his son carrying the burden of murdering his father when the poor kid was already screwed up. If that was Dexter knowingly taking the easy way out, then it was yet another selfish act of a serial killer. And what a dark note to end on, having his final act being a selfish one, although in the moment he thought he was setting Harrison free. However, like everyone else, I still love the character of Dexter Morgan, and I would relish a chance to see him again, and we're going to get it. We don't need Kills of the Week. Let the show be something different, as New Blood was. I guess this is what Scott Reynolds has been so busy writing recently. He's been sharing a lot of social media posts with his music of choice for writing sessions. So, maybe he's been busy writing scripts for Resurrection. But what Resurrection does do is give the writers another stab at giving Dexter a universally loved ending. But part of me is nervous of this. Although Season 8 was mostly disappointing, I didn't mind that Dexter lost everything at the end. He was still out there, somewhere, which I liked, but he was in exile. A self-imposed punishment for what he'd brought to those he'd cared about. I appreciated that because it didn't give Dexter a happy ending. I know many love Dexter blindly, no matter what he does, and that's fine. But that does set these people up for disappointment when a murderer doesn't get rewarded for their crimes. New Blood went the same way in that sense. It reminded us that for all his efforts to be better, Dexter is still a killer, and how would it be satisfying if he got rewarded for that? How would it be something morally satisfying? In my opinion, it wouldn't be. If he'd conquered his darkness once and for all, perhaps I'd feel a bit differently. If he got a happy ending after that, or something close to it, then okay. New Blood showed, though, that no matter what he does, no matter how hard he tries, and he certainly tried at times, ultimately he can't escape who he is, and that darkness came back out there in all its glory. Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling a bit, but what I'm trying to say is that, in my opinion, we've already had 2 endings that punish Dexter to different extents. Can he ever go back to the smiley, nicey Dexter that we've seen at times in the past? Can he ever fully conquer his darkness 100%? I suppose these are some of the questions that Resurrection might ask, and certainly New Blood asked some of these questions. I have to say, though, I'm really giddy with the anticipation of seeing Michael back in that role again. The fanboy in me is doing backflips. Can't wait to see what's going to happen. On our Facebook page, facebook.com/Dissecting Dexter, there were some interesting reactions, mostly positive, but some with some trepidation. I'll go through some of your comments about the Resurrection announcement. Mark Baldin says, mind blown, I'll take it. Bruce Evans says, I just wish they'd planned this all out more in advance. New Blood was originally meant to be a one-off revival, and that's why it ended how it did, with Dexter supposedly dying. Now they're making season 2, which makes the ending of season 1 just awkward, because they're going to have to come up with a ridiculous explanation about how he survived. I always thought an interesting season 2 would have been Dexter and Harrison teaming up in LA, killing people. But the way season 1 ended, I have no idea what they're going to do with Dexter Resurrection. Casper Larson thinks that Resurrection, aka New Blood season 2, is going to feature Harrison and Dexter as Ghost Dad, just like we saw Harry in the original Dexter. Casper, yes, I can't remember if I said this earlier, but they've said that this is a direct sequel to New Blood, so we could call it New Blood season 2. The publicity so far has been all about Hall reprising his role, nothing about Jack Olcott or Harrison coming back. This doesn't confirm, but does imply the show will be focused on Dexter after he survives the bullet, rather than being a ghost dad to Harrison. I'm not sure if I'd have liked that as much as Dexter surviving, and we follow his story, maybe seeking out Harrison later. As to how Dexter survives, Alison Roberto and Russell Brooke Vaughan both quote a Variety interview with Hall, who was a little cagey about how Dexter's back, but referred to it being very cold out there, implying, as we just talked about, that maybe he went hypothermic and it saved him losing too much blood, giving the medics time to save him. Indeed, Clive Phillips has since said in an interview with the LA Times that they've already worked out how Dexter survives, so that certainly takes Ghost Dexter off the table. Patron Jennifer Pennington messaged to say the announcements are wild, and she thinks Original Sin is going to be awesome. Elsewhere, I've been chatting with our buddy Nick Henderson. He's obviously stoked about all the Dexter we've got coming, but he thinks the writers are taking a huge gamble with Resurrection, but he hopes it pays off, as do I. And you can read Nick's thoughts on the new show at dexterdaily.com. Another old friend, Chris in Scotland, messaged he's worried that Resurrection will only see Dexter as Ghost Dad to Harrison. He wants Dexter to be properly resurrected, surviving the bullet and continuing his story. And as we've talked about, by all accounts, that is what's going to happen. Jack Martin wonders if they're going to retcon the New Blood finale and how they'll do it. Yes, it looks like they are, but if the explanation is done well and the story for the season is good, I probably won't care. I want to give a nod to listener John Lewis, who messaged me, but my Twitter settings won't let me see his post. Describes it as sensitive content, so I don't know if John let out a swear or not. I'm sorry, John, I've no idea what you said. I've tried to play with the settings on my account, but it just won't display. So apologies, but I appreciate you responding. Also on Twitter, sorry, I can't call it X, it's just dumb. It'll always be Twitter to me. Ujwal Shridamurthy messaged to say how he was excited just hearing Michael would be doing voiceover work for original Sin, but maybe fainted for a few seconds when hearing about Resurrection. He says he's really pumped and can't wait for both shows. I'm with you, mate. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. First knowing about the voiceover and then Resurrection, it was a 1-2 punch on the morning when I'm travelling on holiday, and all I can think of is how I need to podcast right now. No, the holiday was lovely, quality family time, and I wouldn't trade it, but I did want to talk about it. Listener Mamoon Rashid emailed dissectingdexter@gmail.com to say, not going to lie, I'm a little excited, but also at the same time worried that they might dilute the series with so many sequels. Is this going to be a theme going forward, to have the show end with a bad ending just so they can start a new sequel? I saw the interview of Michael C. Hall saying it takes place after New Blood, so he survived the gunshot. They better have a really, really good explanation for it. And also, how is it going to work with the prequel? Are they going to be completely separate, or are they somehow going to tie them in? Maybe we will get Dexter Multiverse, where he can travel through time in the past to change it. I don't know what I'm saying anymore, just wanted to send in my initial thoughts about the news. Thanks, Mamoon. Let's not even go there with the multiverse. I've had enough of it with Marvel movies. Although the new Deadpool Wolverine movie is bloody awesome. I had an absolute blast the other night watching that. So, to your points, Nick Henderson had a thought. I think it was Nick. A thought about whether there is a clue in having Hall do Dexter's inner voice for Original Sin. What if Original Sin is Dexter telling the story of his youth to someone in the present day that we'll then see in Resurrection? Perhaps someone like Batista, maybe a prison psychiatrist or something like that. Although I think Batista would be more effective if they were going that route. And then at the end of Original Sin, it will cut to the present, where we'll see present day Dexter talking to someone. It's an interesting theory, but might be a way if they are tying the two series together. Yeah, they might be unconnected, of course, and if you pushed me, I'd say each series is its own thing, but we will see. Whatever happens, there can be no doubt this is a very exciting time to be a Dexter fan, even if some are a little nervous of how it will play out. Say what you like about the Dexter creators, but they can sure still surprise us. I'm really excited, and I just hope they can pull it all off. Someone mentioned diluting the brand, something that Star Wars has fallen foul of. I hope that doesn't happen with Dexter. I'm going to trust the show there, the old mantra. New Blood did a lot for me to restore faith. While it wasn't perfect, I still wish they'd had a couple more episodes to avoid the ending feel so rushed. But overall, there was a lot to enjoy on so many levels, not just the story. And let's not forget, it included what many consider to be one of the best ever Dexter episodes. So I'm hoping for the same moving forward with these two new shows. Some I've seen on the socials are writing this all off before they've even seen it. We won't be doing that here. I'll be optimistic and reserve judgment until we've watched it. Most of all, I'm looking forward to getting together with all of you again and dissecting some new Dexter. That's just so much fun for me, and I can't wait. Already I've been seeing some familiar names popping up on social media, responding to posts, and it's good to know you're still out there. Indeed, we've mentioned a few of those names today. If you're listening to me and you're new to the podcast, and you found it because you're looking for Dexter content on the back of the recent announcements, welcome, my friends. I hope you've got something out of my ramblings, and we'll come back next time. We've got a good community here, some very, very thoughtful contributors, and you won't get a wave of negativity or jumping on the bandwagon, crapping all over it that you might get on the socials. We stay grounded, I like to think, and try to give a balanced view overall, and we have fun doing it. So for now, thank you all for listening. We'll be back soon, and with the continuing Season 3 rewatch nearing its end. And we'll be back also with another update as we inevitably get more Dexter news over the coming weeks and months. So please join me soon when we dissect some more Dexter together. Until then, take care. Bye for now.